Hey everyone, today we're going to tackle a classic JavaScript headache, one that every single developer runs into, the mystery of the lost this. Yeah, if you've ever passed a method as a callback and then watched it just break, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, let's just jump right into the scene of the crime. Look at this code. It seems so simple, right? We've got a user object, his name is John, and a method to say hi. We then ask setTimeout to run that method after a second. You'd expect it to say hello John, but what you actually get is hello undefined. So what on earth is going on here? All right, let's break this down. This whole thing has a name. It's called losing this. And it happens all the time. The moment you take a method away from its object and pass it somewhere else, like to a callback, it's like it forgets where it came from. The function loses its connection, its entire context. See, when you pass user.sayHi to setTimeout, you're not passing the object and the function. You're only handing over a reference to the function itself. The link back to user is completely severed. So a second later, when the timer goes off and calls the function, this isn't pointing to user anymore. In a browser, it just defaults to the global window object, and since window doesn't have a first name property, you get undefined. So how in the world do we fix this? Well, the most intuitive fix, the one most of us try first, is to just use a wrapper function. Instead of passing the method directly, we wrap it up in a little anonymous function. And you know what? This totally seems to work. The arrow function remembers the user from the scope around it. So when it calls user.sayHi, everything connects perfectly. Problem solved, right? Well, not so fast. There is a hidden danger here. What happens if that user variable gets changed before our 1 second timer is up? The wrapper doesn't care. It's going to call sayHi on whatever the new value of user is, and that can lead to some incredibly sneaky, hard to find bugs. To do this the right way, to really bulletproof our code against those kinds of bugs, JavaScript gives us a fantastic built-in tool. And this is the real hero of our story today, the bind method. It was designed for this exact scenario. The idea behind bind is so simple, but it's incredibly powerful. When you call .bind on a function, it creates a brand new special version of that function. And in this new version, the value of this is permanently locked to whatever object you passed in. You can think of it like creating a function with a permanent leash tied directly back to the object it's supposed to work with. So let's see how you'd actually use it. It's a really easy process. First, you start with the method you need, user.sayHi. Second, you use .bindUser on it. This creates that new bound function. Then you just pass that new function to setTimeout. And that's it. The context is now permanently locked in. It will always be the original user object we wanted, no matter what happens to that variable down the line. And that's really what makes bind so essential. It makes your code so much more robust. The bound function carries its own context with it, wherever it goes. This makes your code predictable and totally immune to those weird bugs we saw with the wrapper. It's for sure the right way to do it. But wait, there's more. It turns out bind is not just a one-trick pony. Fixing this is its main job for sure, but it has this second kind of hidden superpower that lets us create something called partial functions. So get this, you can use bind to not only lock the context, but also to pre-fill some of the arguments of a function ahead of time. This is an amazing way to create specialized, reusable little helper functions from more generic ones. Let's look at an example. Imagine we have a generic function mul that just multiplies two numbers. Now by calling mul.bind null, 2, we can create a brand new function called double. That first argument, null, just tells bind we don't care about this context here. But the second argument, the 2, gets permanently locked in as the first argument to mul. So now calling double 5 is the exact same as calling mul to 5. How cool is that? And we can do it again and again. Want a triple function? No problem. Just bind 3 as the first argument instead. This technique is called partial function application, and it's a fantastic way to make your code way cleaner and more declarative without having to write a bunch of new functions from scratch. Okay, before you go off and start binding everything in sight, there are a couple of really important rules, some gotchas, that you absolutely need to know to use it the right way and avoid any confusion. So 3 key things to remember. First, and this is a big one, a function can't be rebound. The very first bind is permanent. It's locked in forever. Trying to call .bind on it again won't do anything. Second, .bind always creates a brand new function object. And third, because it's a new object, any custom properties you might have had on the original function, yeah, those don't get copied over. So there you have it. We've seen how .bind is the perfect solution for the lost this problem And we've even unlocked its hidden superpower for creating partial functions. It really makes our code safer, more predictable, and a lot more reusable. And that leaves us with one final thought. Now that you know this trick, take a look at your own code. Where could you use a partial function to make things just a little bit simpler?